The release of Tekken 8 has been huge, and it's been one of the biggest fighting game releases in recent history, as a brand new entry in a fighting game franchise notorious for its complexity, depth, and straight up difficulty. I'd never been too big into fighting games myself, having only played some Street Fighter 6 and Melty Blood from time to time, but I challenged myself to take 1 month to get as good at Tekken 8 as I possibly could as a complete beginner to the franchise. To ensure that I try to make the most out of these 30 days, I gave myself 2 goals in this video. 1. Hit Orange rank sometime before the end of the month, and 2. Accumulate 100 hours of total playtime in Tekken 8. This video is going to take you through my journey week by week to show you the progress I made in my first month of Tekken 8, so without wasting any more time, let's get into week 1. Week 1 was launch week. The game had just come out, and for the time being I was just going to mess around with the game and get comfortable with the mechanics of Tekken. I'd never played a 3D fighting game before, and I wanted to learn the difference between this and your traditional 2D fighting game. But before that, I had to pick a main, and that main was... yeah, you already know. Right from the jump, Reina was by and far the most popular character in Tekken 8. Everything from her design to her playstyle was perfect for a newcomer to the series, and a lot of beginners were going to pick her up as a main, and I wasn't really going to be any different. So after picking who I was going to main, I quickly shelved that character and decided to hop into the new story mode, which was honestly way better than I expected from a fighting game. Sure, it was really corny, but it was still a pretty fun time overall, and a lot better than I had expected from a fighting game. Since I didn't really know what I was doing and didn't want to switch off hard difficulty, I ended up using special style for most characters, which is basically just an easier way of playing the game. After finishing the story mode, I decided to hop into an actual match and started playing some people in quick matches, and I was pretty satisfied with my play despite not really knowing what I was doing. The basic string that I would spam during this time was just 2-2-2-2. It worked fine after a combo starter like down forward 2, and even in neutrals. Some people just didn't know the string went on for 4 hits, so they'd try to mash out after the 2nd or 3rd hit. Later on during release day, my locals were actually hosting a Tekken 8 tournament, so I decided to enter, and I ended up doing pretty well. I ended up going 2-2 in the bracket and ended up having a pretty good time. The rest of the week I basically spent messing around in Tekken 8's other game modes, and there were a couple really cool features I found useful and pretty interesting. For one, the ghost battles, where you could basically fight an AI version of any player, was super sick, and I noticed it was able to recognize my playstyle and patterns and reproduce them pretty accurately. Although ghosts themselves aren't really hard to beat, here's some footage of me beating a blue ranks ghost by basically just spamming, but even if they're easy to beat, they're a lot of fun to fight against. I also really liked the features they had in practice mode, like remembering your positions and the punishment training. Those proved really useful later on, in practicing stuff like wall combos or basic punish game. During this week I also learned a pretty basic Reina combo off any launcher, and this combo would end up carrying me through a lot of the next month. Then there's Tekken Ball, a game mode brought back from one of the older Tekken games, and I gotta say, Jesus, the bots are good at Tekken Ball. It took me like half an hour to win a single game against a hard bot. Besides those modes, I spent the majority of my time just playing through quick matches and messing around getting used to Reina, and occasionally learning a couple new moves. So week 1 I spent most of my time messing around and sounding more like a shitty game journalist instead of a fighting game player, so I started taking it a little more seriously in week 2 and began the ranked grind. For this week I really tried just focusing on fundamentals and catching my opponent whiffing. In week 1 most of my lost matches came from my impatience, and down in the beginner ranks, basically everyone is mashing and throwing out some kind of unsafe moves, so if you could wait your turn and punish, you should be good to go. Anyways, I began the ranked grind from first Dan, and I quickly learned a couple key moves and developed a game plan around them. There was 1-1-2, which on hit I would transition into one of Reina's many stances, Sentai stance, and from there I would usually go for the grab, which is unbreakable. You have to duck it, and if I sensed the opponent was about to duck, I'd use Sentai 2, which is a mid. Down forward 2, I would occasionally throw out if my opponent was approaching or I thought they would throw out an attack, and that would usually lead to a combo, though sometimes I would fuck up the execution. If I wanted a low, I would approach with crouch dash 4-4, which looking back was an atrocious move, and sometimes in neutral I would just throw out a 2-string. With those 4 simple moves, I started focusing on fundamentals and observing my opponent's patterns, and it worked out really well. Green ranks, which I thought during the first week were impenetrable walls of Tekken, was suddenly a rank that I found myself in a couple games. Down in the beginner ranks, there's a lot of people throwing out random rage arts, unsafe moves, and just generally mashing when it's not their turn, so learning to slow down, play defensively, and wait my turn was super effective. Whiff punishing is also a concept that I familiarized myself with down in green ranks. Whiff punishing, for anyone who might not know, is just punishing a move that completely missed your character. Midway through the week, I had to head home, and on the long-ass train ride home, I ended up watching some video on YouTube on punishable moves on Victor, so I went into punishment training and started practicing the punishes. I assumed learning the punishes and being able to download a character's punishable moves would be a useful skill set going forward, so picking Victor seemed like a good starting point. I also started training throw breaks, which I wouldn't even be good at by the end of the month, but I still tried anyways. By the end of week 2, I ended up in yellow ranks at Assailant after only a couple good ranked sessions. The climb this week was a little easier than I thought it'd be, and on the Dunning-Kruger effect chart, I was at peak beginner's overconfidence. But from here on out, things were only gonna get harder. Week 3 was when Tekken started getting a little harder and I started getting lost in what to practice or learn. I started spending more time in ranked matches in practice mode, but also ghost fights, which I found to be more and more fun, but less and less helpful. So by the end of the week, I would start phasing the ghost fights out of my sessions altogether. My regular practice routine during this week was Victor punishes, throw break training, ranked matches, and ghost matches. I also started to learn more key moves to add to my game plan that either gave me frame advantage or some other benefit. These included wall running 3, which on block is plus 6, allowing you to follow up with all sorts of moves that can catch your opponent mashing, and trust me, your opponents at this rank are going to be mashing. Forward 2, a longer ranged move that transitions into Sentai stance, where you could then use another move I learned, Sentai 3, which on block is plus 1, so it's good to go for as a default option. And down back 2, a key low to check your opponent's defense. After adjusting my gameplay, I wanted to start learning more movement options since I felt that movement was a spot that I was severely lacking in. So I tried to incorporate more sidestepping at key moments during the round. Most of the time this would be unsuccessful and I'd just get hit. The ranked matches were going smoothly, though a little too smoothly. Partway through the week, I realized that orange rank was way too easy a goal to hit, so instead, to add a bit extra challenge, I decided instead of orange ranks, I would aim for red ranks. And sure enough, on day 18 of the challenge, I hit Vanquisher and made it out of yellow ranks. The grind to orange ranks, though harder than the one to yellow, was still overall not too much of an issue, and there weren't any hair-pulling and frustrating days like you're going to be seeing in the next week of the challenge. A couple more notable things that happened during the week. I got plugged on for the first time. Wait, plugged. Honestly, kinda surprising I just got one now. It was a Victor who stomped me in the first game, then I beat him in the second and was about to take the set with a rage art, but he got it there. Now, there's something I have to confess before we move on, something I should have mentioned at the beginning of this video. I've been cheating. More accurately though, I've been using a snack box. Well, at least I was at this point during the challenge. See, I started this challenge off playing on a typical pad controller until partway through week 1 I remembered I'd actually bought a fighting game controller that I intended to use for another game a while back. It was this shitty little leverless controller, and once I tried it out I immediately switched over because on it movement just felt so smooth and it felt easier to do a lot of tech on, at least for myself. Eventually issues would arise though, like the jump key bouncing off whenever I pressed it the wrong way, so I caved in and bought myself a normal snack box micro. I ended up finding out about a couple leverless tricks that I thought were pretty neat, like an easier way to electric wind godfist and Korean backdash, but for this 1 month period, I wouldn't really implement them. Week 4 was the last week of the month of this challenge, and so it was time to start putting everything together and also start more effectively practicing. This week I spent the most time in practice compared to any of the other weeks, just trying to get a better understanding of other characters and defending against them. I'd gotten a lot better since I'd started playing the game and built a lot more cohesive and solid strategy around my character's tools. Reina has been a blast this month, and I still haven't really played any other character in the game, though by the end of this week I started considering some other characters to try like Dragunov and Jun, but most importantly for this week I had to reach red ranks before the end of the challenge, and this ranked grind was going to be the hardest of any of the weeks that came before this. Yes! String cheese. Red ranks, finally. That took so long. Okay. I had done it. I hit red ranks and with still a couple days left in this challenge. Surprisingly, no pluggers throughout this whole week appeared on my way to red ranks. I know the community complains about them a lot and they're definitely a problem, but I myself can't really complain too much considering how few of them I've personally ran into. Once I hit red ranks, my motivation to play the game definitely sharply decreased, but I kept at it for the last few days and ended up just enjoying myself playing some quick matches. Grinding Tekken 8 this past month has been super fun and the improvement I saw myself making felt awesome, but I don't think this challenge is done yet, and I've got a lot more to prove to myself in this game. Alright, that was the last month of Tekken. Like I mentioned previously, I had never been the biggest fighting game player. I always wanted an excuse to dive in and try my best to get as good as possible at one of them, to really see if it was for me, and it definitely is. Now the one caveat at the end of this challenge is that I actually didn't end up meeting my goal of 100 hours of playtime, because I got super busy midway through the challenge with school and stuff, but I'm glad I got the red ranks within this month. This whole format of playing this game for a month, I stole from a YouTube video I saw from El Maxo, when he spent 100 days on Spy and TF2, so I wanted to try it out myself. With that being said, yes, I do plan on eventually going to 100 days on Tekken 8, but until then, I'll be working on some other projects. See ya.